On this episode of the Black Boss Ladies platform,
I retired in 2022, but I do have a lot of friends who work for the CIA and work at the Pentagon, and we talked, and it is not good at all right now.
Yeah, I've heard that from people. That is
we can see it all everywhere.
But they say it's worse than what we think.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
It's a national security risk, actually.
Let that sink in.
I had found out about our family being enslaved by St. Louis University and the Jesuits, and that my ancestors helped to build not only St. Louis University, but St. Francis Xavier College Church and a lot of the Catholic institutions in the area from 1823 to 1865. Seeing this, it definitely helped me to know what my mission was. And my mission is to not only preserve the legacy and the heritage of our ancestors and tell their stories. They were not some nameless souls, right? They were real people. I just want everybody to just think about that. What did they do? If they gave up, what would we be at right now?
Exactly.
They had they had to bear the weight of not only enslavement, Jim Crow, apartheid, mass incarceration, any little thing, race riots, all of that. But what if the freedom fighters and the sit-ins at the counters, what if they said, "Oh, it's too much, I'm scared"? What, the bus boy?
They didn't have the privilege of being like that.
What would we be in? So are we going to win? This is our time.
Exactly. It's our time to keep fighting.
Welcome to the Black Boss Ladies platform, the place where legacies live.
Welcome to the Black Boss Ladies platform podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Lee.
And I'm Julia Myers.
And today we have with us Miss Robin Proudie. She is a decorated U.S. Navy veteran and retired civil servant with over 24 years of federal service. She's also the founder and executive director of the Descendants of the St. Louis University Enslaved. Her work centers on remembrance, restoration, and reparative justice. Thank you for coming here today.
Yes, we're so excited to get in this interview that we were already having a pre-interview.
We're having a good old conversation before the camera started rolling.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yes.
So one question we always ask our guests before we dive in is, how do they define success?
How do I define success? I define success, I know it's different for everybody, but to me, I think that success is when you can wake up every morning and you're happy with the way that you impact your community, how you impact the people that you love, and how you feel joy and happiness. So I know a lot of people think that success is about money and monetary things, which I've been there, done that. But in my 50-something years on this planet, I've come to realize what, for me, success is being able to leave a legacy that you would feel good about. So that's what I feel.
And that's what we're all about at the Black Boss Lady platform, is interviewing women who are making their legacy in life. And that looks different for everyone.
Indeed.
And we've learned that it's kind of unfoldment. Like, it's happening in the moment sometimes. We're not even going after something, which is kind of your story, right? It kind of found you in such a way. But before we get there, can you just tell us about the beginning? The beginning, going into the military. Is that something that you planned, or how did you get there?
Okay. So of course I'm born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. And after high school, growing up, I always wanted to be in the entertainment industry. I am a creative and I was a singer and everything. So I went into the military because I wanted to get out of St. Louis. That was an avenue for me. I did go to Harris Stowe's Teachers College for a semester. That wasn't working out because my daddy made too much money for me to get a scholarship at that time, and he was, flaky.
Mhm.
So I was like, you know what? Let me get out of here. And so a friend of mine was like, why don't we go on a buddy plan? And so, and a lot of my family members had already gone to the military and used that as an avenue to kind of move forward.
Yeah.
So I joined the Navy. And from there, I started my.
She's pointing.
I'm pointing because you went to the military on a buddy plan.
I did. I went to the Navy on a buddy plan, and I also used to teach at Harriston State at State University. By the time I taught there, but
I went to station at.
I was stationed at Whidbey Island, Washington.
Okay. I got everything I asked for. I wanted to go to Hawaii, so my first duty station was on Oahu for 4 years, and I didn't appreciate it like I would now because it was a small island and I couldn't wait to get off that island. But now I can't wait to go to an island.
Right, but you were young then.
Yes. And then I got stationed in San Diego.
San Diego's big.
It was beautiful.
Yeah,
and so
my brother, he was in the Marines, and I got to go to one of the bases there.
In Hawaii.
No, in San Diego.
Oh, yes. San Diego is beautiful. And I joined the Navy. I did really well in the military. I, worked with several like pilots and F-14, A-12 aircraft and things like that. And during the Desert Storm, I, of course, as a female at that time, you couldn't, and I wouldn't want to, but I did get a defense medal and other medals supporting that effort. And so I came into some situations while in the military, though, that did, affect me. Some bad experience, especially as a Black woman in the 80s and the early 90s in the military. It was still, it was not only hard sexist for women, but it was also racist as well. So some things happened, but I did excel, and then I did decide to separate with the honorable discharge from the military.
But you did 24 years.
Well, no, I did 7 years, but I did 24 years with the federal government. So after I got out, I was in the band. I told you I'm a creative. What was the name of the band? Wind Force. So while in the military, I was in a band, singing and modeling. I was doing all kind of stuff. I was on a couple of TV shows. Magnum PI.
Because you are in California.
I was in Hawaii. I was in Magnum PI. A couple of times, they would have the military, and I'm always trying to do something because I'm creative. And then from there, I got out of the military. I was in a band, and then I got in a girl group, and we auditioned for MC Hammer.
Oh, really?
We had some audition at a couple of record labels and got a record deal. So I got out the military.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So you were singing, right?
Yes, singing. Yes, I'm a singer and a songwriter.
What type? So your girl group was like R&B, pop,
R&B.
Okay.
But at the time, so from San Diego, I got out the military, moved to Los Angeles because of course that's where we wanted to be. And I worked in the entertainment for about 6-7 years. Of course, I was older than everybody thought I was because I had already been in the Navy for 7-8 years. And then, but as I began to see how the industry operated, a lot of things with propositions, and in order to do this and that, you needed to do this. And each and every one of us in that industry has to make a decision. How you're going to live your life.
I think I kind of believe that, because me and my husband, we were just having a conversation about, and I told him I never want to be famous. I just always want the money. But I think when you get in those spaces, sometimes the energy may be dark, and you're literally making a decision like, am I up to give up what they want me to be?
And that's exactly, I've had some successes while in the industry. I'm on the Blank Man soundtrack. I wrote for Maya on the Belly soundtrack. I've done different things, but I found that I was kept getting propositioned, and I had to make a determination, was the payoff greater.
Proposition in what way? Just
The casting couch, sexually, you have to do this if you want this. That is a real thing. The so-called Me Too, that is a real thing. And so I just...
And we can kind of see it. I think as the public or the masses, we kind of like put a veil on it. But honestly, he is 50-something and she 18. Like, you seeing it in your face, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to say any names or anything, but like back then when they play those clips now, it's like, that's disgusting.
I mean, even in some of the movies, when you see it's like the men are really way too old to be there dating those women in the movies. It's like, why is it a 15, 20-year age difference between the leading actor and the woman who is his love interest?
Right.
So you can see it is already semi-inappropriate just on TV. So then what happens behind the scenes that people don't necessarily have to be accountable for until the Me Too movement comes and make them accountable.
Exactly.
It was the norm.
And it was a male-dominated industry at that time. And so at some point, I just started going behind the scenes and started doing things like that. So I worked at a couple of labels and things like that. And I met my ex. And he was still in the military. So I decided to moved to Washington, D.C. I moved from, where were we at? I moved from L.A. to New York. A friend of mine who I was working with, Kenny.
So you done lived in some great places.
You would have been to Hawaii. You would have been to L.A.
Everywhere. Not been there, lived there.
Let me say this.
Those are those are the places people want to live.
Let me tell you this too. Not only that, and I reflect on that because every place I've been, it was something. When I moved to LA, then Rodney King happened.
Oh wow!
I'm there at the whole time on La Brea, out getting stuff like everybody else. And then from there, when I moved to New York, I come out of the subway going to my job at the local 802 Musicians Union, and I look up and all this paper and everything is falling because the first Twin Towers fell. So I'm looking like, where does everybody move and running from? So I went into the building, everybody watching the screen TV, and we just sit there and watch the second tower fall.
Oh my God.
And from there, when I met my ex and I moved to DC, I was sitting when I worked at the Pentagon for 9 years in Intel. I'm sitting on the very spot where the plane crashed into the building.
Yeah, during that same event. Now that is crazy because right. So you were there when the towers fell in New York, and then you end up working in the Pentagon building where the plane crashed into the Pentagon on 9/11 as well.
Right outside my door, they had the memorial of those who passed away during that when the plane. And
you were part of history.
Some major events in history. Wow. So what about the Pentagon? I mean, I know you can't tell us the secrets, but
you had a clearance, a security clearance.
So
top secret.
So when I moved back to Washington D.C., I fell back on my military career, my military background, and I started working for the federal government. I worked at the United States Department of Agriculture for a couple of years. Then I moved up and went to the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Department, working with the Deputy Assistant Attorney General under Bush and Obama, and actually helped to bring the GINA 6 up to remember the GINA 6 and everything to the civil rights and move that forward. They didn't even know about it, but I've always been an activist. My mother was a Black Panther.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so I would educate them on what was going on in the streets. From there, I worked in what you call a foreign liaison, and what I was an attaché coordinator. I had a top secret SCI clearance in Intel, and I can't really talk about exactly what I did, but I worked with foreign diplomats in the foreign embassies, not only locally in Washington, D.C., but as well as the ambassadors across the globe.
So I'm pretty sure you have a lot of opinions about what's happening right now, but we won't go into
I'll
that.
just say this. I'm so glad that I don't have, I retired in 2022, but I do have a lot of friends who work for the CIA and work at the Pentagon, and we talked, and it is not a good, it's not good at all right now.
Yeah, I've heard that from people. That is
we can see it all everywhere.
But they say it's worse than what we think.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
It's a national security risk, actually.
Let that sink in.
I know, because I don't even think I can comprehend it sometimes.
I feel,
I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't think I can comprehend it.
Yeah, well, I think that we're not going to go too far in this because we're going to cover Robin.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's meant to be for you not to understand. It's so much stuff being thrown out there. It's like chaos. It's creating chaos. So you really don't know what to attach yourself to, what to worry about, because it's so many issues. And in that, it's covering up other stuff.
It's a tactic. It's a strategy that they use. It's called flooding the zone. Throwing so many things out there so quickly that it'll make you feel like it's too overwhelming.
It is.
And you feel apathetic.
Nervous system.
And you can't do anything. Because you can't do anything. So that is a tactic, and I would say to everybody, do not feed into that and focus on things that are real and necessary, because that is a way, that is a strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So if you're listening to this, it's that when it's come out, it's probably going to be even more things happening. So as you said, that's some good advice.
It's still work on, one of the things that I've seen a lot lately, people talk about, well, we didn't elect him, so it's time for us to sit back and do self-care. No, it's not time for you to sit back and do self-care. We're not going to allow these next few years to continue to regress. It's time to keep fighting, and keep moving forward.
And I would add to that, there is a way that we can do self-care. We can hunker down and take care of each other, but at the same time, there are things that we can do. There are local elections. There is putting people in power, getting civically engaged, so that you can understand what's going around. Yes, we can take care of ourselves, but the way you take care of yourselves is you don't sit back and allow anything to happen.
Yes.
And there are things that we can do locally and regionally that can help move this along.
I just actually joined, maybe like a few months ago, I joined this group called When Black Women Lead. So they're in Missouri. No, this is different. This is the names do sound alike. But this one is actually in Missouri. They're raising money to help get black women candidates in Missouri elected.
That's right. That's great.
But the names are a lot alike. I'm like, maybe
Black Women Lead.
Exactly. So there's this When Black Women Lead, and and it's like they don't say elect this black woman. They support several black women on several different levels.
Exactly.
And so I do love that, because we need that here in Missouri, because the Democratic Party doesn't necessarily put money here because they figure it's a losing state because it's red now. Right. It used to be a bill with the state, but it's not anymore.
And that's some of the things they need to work on.
It did.
The Democratic
Not too
Party.
long ago, really. Like right before Obama.
Well, they need to change their strategy and not do that and come here and put money into these that has that stronghold, so you can break. That's what Stacey Abrams did.
In Georgia, she changed the game.
Exactly. So why are you still doing the same thing?
Right.
That's so true.
So you you retired from your career at the Pentagon. That was your last position.
No, actually, so I did 9 years at the Pentagon.
Okay.
And then from there, I got a promotion, and I went to the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts.
Okay.
So, and those last 5 years were the last 5 years of my government career, which is a total of 24 years with my 7 years, because that's all federal, military and federal. And at the United States Courts is the office, like, for instance, and this is why it's important to pay attention. People don't know when they say, oh, I'm not going to vote for the presidency. We're not. But the president, he elects the federal judges. who will make the decision.
Exactly.
And so at the United States courts, I work in the Judicial Services Office, so I was able to see every judge that was nominated, because they had to come to our offices to get their orientation, their badges. We supported federal judges and their staff across the nation.
Okay.
So I understood the importance of that, because when you see who is on the federal courts, you think it don't affect me. Don't go in front of a judge.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. It's like we really need to think about that. Who is being elected as the judges? You know, when we're talking about mass incarceration, we need to look at across the board. Like I didn't start it, but I had this initiative in mind that I had brought to one of our local NAACP chapters called Justice Through the Jury Box. And basically, it was an initiative that I think would be great just to make people, hey, serve on the jury. You know, black people, a lot of times we get that jury note. We're like, I don't want to be here. But guess what? The same black people did that when your cousin was up for trial and something, or a family member was on trial. You need more black people in that jury box, and we need more sympathetic judges as judges too. So all of that stuff is important.
Fair-minded.
Fair-minded.
Exactly. Across the board. It's so important. It affects everything that people don't know. Everything you do, there is a process and a system. And by us staying out of that process, that's how they've gotten, even here in Ferguson with the uprising. You notice what happened once they started learning and we started engaging, who changed, that look changed in Ferguson, right? So, but until they educated themselves, how you going to have a whole black mayor, everything in
population, and no elected black officials, no black police officers, nothing. And you living off the backs of the black people and getting
ain't nobody
all tax base and everything.
And you have to be engaged, and that's how it's done. If you don't do that, then who's going to run it?
I agree. And we need to be in those positions. So then after the Pentagon, after the career,
so I retired. So
you retired early too, because you said 50s. So
I'm still young and sexy.
In the military, federal government.
I will tell you. Actually, and thank goodness I'm not working for the government right now. But in my next mission, in the mission that I'm on right now, and I really want to say this, that the Most High God. Really, this is how I know I am on my purpose, because he put me in a position where I could retire early. And in the government, because of COVID had happened at that time, and they were top heavy. So they were like, if anybody retire early, you won't get any points deducted.
And that happens sometimes. It's happening at the city right now.
Right.
Because like you said, people move up. Those salaries are heavy. So it's cheaper to let you just retire.
Right. And so I was calculating like how much it's going to take out of my $300. Oh, I can make that. I can, and at that time I had found out about our family being enslaved by St. Louis University and the Jesuits, and that my ancestors helped to build not only St. Louis University, but St. Francis Xavier College Church and a lot of the Catholic institutions in the area from 1823 to 1865. So at that point, I had found out about that. And I was wanting to also come home to my family. I was going through some things, and it just all happened at the right time, and I chose to retire. And then after that, about a year later, about 6 months later, I moved back to St. Louis.
Yeah, because you've been gone for a long time at this point.
Yes.
You lived in all those amazing places.
Yes.
So it's like you were returning home, but you were returning home to something beautiful too.
Yes, to what I'm doing now. I would what I call is the most important mission of my life.
So tell us about that. You kind of gave us a small introduction of your family, but you were returning. Let's go into that story.
Okay. So while I was living in Maryland, working in D.C., I received a letter in the mail. This was in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And when I opened that letter, I saw Slavery, History, Memory, and Reconciliation. And it was from the Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
Jesuits are a Catholic order of priests. Okay, and which is Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. So what they said in the letter, that they had been doing research. They were part of a universities studying slavery consortium, where universities across the nation had begun to study their ties to enslavement. So in 2016 to 2019, St. Louis University, in the joint initiative with the Society of Jesus, did the research. So they, in their archives at St. Louis University, the Jesuit archives, the Archdiocese here in St. Louis, they looked and they found names. And from those archives and records, our ancestors were in there. So they, after the research, they began to reach out to the descendants of these people who they found. And my family is one of the descendant family groups who actually have direct descendants. Enslaved, were trafficked by the first 11 presidents at St. Louis University from 1823 to 1865. And so upon finding out that information, and then learning and meeting with the researchers, I began to really try. Not only did I tie it to my own personal trauma of being assaulted in the military. I talked about earlier how I went through some things. I was sexually assaulted by one of my superiors at 19, who was a mentor. And, I normally, I can talk about that now because I feel empowered, but reading the records, and I see my great-great-grandmother 3 times removed, Henrietta Mills, enslaved at St. Louis University. She was born there in 1844. And what she went through, it really changed me. It helped me to tie in that the fact that we're still here, and if they can endure for us to be here, then I need to get it together.
And you know what? Let me say this before you go too far, because it's like a lot of us don't, like I study history and I know a little bit about my family history, but I haven't traced it all the way back, because it's hard to even trace all the way back. You need almost a university to do that. So it's like, it's a positive, because now it's like you get to know all these things.
You know you come from greatness.
And then it's a negative in a way too, because it's like now you really are entrenched in it, and you realize this suffering that happens. Like it brings it closer. So it could be both positive and negative.
It's bittersweet. Bittersweet, but you know what? It's a necessary thing. And sometimes we have to. It's necessary. It is. What you're talking about is like most African Americans, most Black people in America. We can't. It's called the 1870 brick wall in genealogical circles, meaning we can't go beyond 1870, because before the Civil War, which was in 1865, Black people were on the slave scrolls of their enslaver. So we were listed on their slave scroll on the census by our age, our sex, male, female, or our so-called race, mulatto, Black, Afro. So after the Civil War in 1865, the first census after that was in 1870. And that was the first time our surnames were added. So they call that, what you're talking about is the 1870 brick wall. And our family did. Through this process with St. Louis University and the Jesuits, we were able to go beyond that.
And everybody we don't get that.
And that's another reason why we as a family decided to bring this out and to move forward, because we understand that most African Americans or Black people will not be able to do this, and we wanted to take you guys on the journey with us.
Yeah, other cultures
and
do.
for giving me that term too. Because I didn't
other
know
cultures like that been through traumatic situations like that. They can trace back. Like my grandmother was in this camp. Like we don't have that luxury.
Yes, I remember sitting in the classroom after Roots came out, and then I went to Normandy. It was mixed. Blacks, whites went to Normandy, and I graduated from U City. But my first 3 years, I went to Normandy, and they were talking about their ancestors coming through Ellis Island and all
exactly.
that.
They got all the way to, they got it all booked in the
right. And we looking at the Black students looking around like we didn't know where we came from.
Exactly.
So it is important for us to tell this history.
Yes.
Because concerted efforts today are trying to even say that they weren't even enslaved; they were workers.
They were,
and they were happy.
They were happy.
Right, and we were, and so that's why it is important, because we do have the receipts. Like I can trace now our from this process all the way back to 1725, and the first person who came to the Maryland colonies, because that's where our ancestors was forced from. We helped to build Georgetown University, and then they forced us. My ancestors, Henrietta, who I talked about, her grandparents and her mother was forced from Maryland in 1829 to come here and to help the Jesuit expand their presence. Yeah.
So when you open this letter, it's pretty much you were opening up a new chapter in your life also.
Yes.
What's your first thoughts when you see this? Like,
you know what? It really, because I was already on a genealogical website. I was looking for both my paternal and maternal side. I was already doing that work. And so I had seen Mother Henrietta in the census, in the 1880 census, but I didn't know where she had came from.
Right. Exactly.
So when I seen that, I was like, what?
It was coming to
She
her.
was enslaved by Catholic priests at St. Louis University.
Wow.
And so it blew my mind, because what it showed was all of us sitting here. Like, we don't know what our ancestors right. So I was like proud, number one, that because she had went on to have 10 children. That I have the record of their marriage. She married at age 15 in the upper colored chapel of St. Francis Xavier College Church. Now you see that big old beautiful church next to SLUE? Okay, before that, it was a smaller one. In 1860, I have the actual record that shows that they allowed him.
I was just going to say they didn't let her do that.
Yes. So one thing about the Catholic priests, they allowed us to get married. We have her communion record at age 10 in 1855. All her brothers and sisters. So mind you, she had 5 siblings who were also born into slavery. Her aunts and uncles and cousins were born into slavery. Actually, our bloodline have been enslaved by the Jesuits since 1725. So
y'all deep together. That's like with them for a while.
Right. And so seeing this, it definitely helped me to know what my mission was. And my mission is to not only preserve the legacy and the heritage of our ancestors and tell their stories. They were not some nameless souls, right? They were real people.
Exactly.
And they were the first of our bloodline to actually experience to be free, because she was born in 1844. The first 20 years of her life, she was enslaved. But after the Civil War in 1865, she was free. Can you imagine being born enslaved and then you experience a little freedom? So I pay homage to that. I look at that, and a lot of us and our ancestors experienced that. So Juneteenth, when they talk about Juneteenth, and the Jubilee of like, oh my God, do you think about they probably never thought that day would come. And so I use that as a source of even what we're going through now with the taking away of this so-called DEI and things like that. That talking about being apathetic and everything, I just want everybody to just think about that. What did they do? If they gave up, what would we be at right now?
Exactly.
They had more. They had to bear the weight of not only enslavement, Jim Crow, apartheid, mass incarceration, any little thing,
race
riots, all of that. But what if the freedom fighters and the sit-ins at the counters, what if they said, "Oh, it's too much, I'm scared"? What the bus boy?
They didn't have the privilege of being like that.
What would we be in? So are we going to win? This is our time.
Exactly. It's our time to keep fighting.
We're going to pass it. Oh, so we're going to say, "Oh no, we're not going to do anything. We're going to give up." We can't. Then what's Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael? Kwame Ture said, "The struggle is not for the past. It's the struggle now is for the future. It is for our kids."
It is.
And I like to couple that with James Baldwin. Because he said, because we worried about, when you said, "Well, what you mean it's not the past? We got to remember our past." James Baldwin said, our history is, we take our history with us. We are history. So no matter what they do, we are history. So we are history. So we take our history with us. So we have to struggle today for our children.
Yeah. I will say, when I think about that time slavery, until recently, my ideas and understanding of slavery was only really came from what the movies that they would show us. I wasn't a big history buff. I didn't go down that space. So that was my only perspective. But when I started reading stuff like the Frederick Douglass book, he made me see slavery in a whole different way. If that makes sense. And it was like you said, she was free. She was enslaved for 20 years and then she got to be free. Like when he's writing, understanding the mental transition that also takes. Right?
And how that impacts us today. Because Dr. Joy DeGruy, she has a book called The Post-Traumatic Slavery Syndrome. So when we were freed, did we get any kind of therapy? Can you imagine the trauma of being separate? You having a baby and you never see that baby again?
Yes.
Or your parents, or you in weak form communities. So we suffer. There are things that I see in my own bloodline today that has a direct correlation to what had happened. And so,
like what you said about that, you said about the child or whatever, you said having the child taken, but also just the thought of that's your child, but that's not your child, right? So some people would not form attachments necessarily to those children, because if those children are then sold away, then how can you continue to stay here? So it's like, that's my child, but that's not my child, because you're not free, and then you're owned, and therefore your child is owned. So the mentality that takes. But beyond what she said, I mean, Carl Jung talked about this years and years ago. This post-traumatic stress syndrome that's passed down from person to person, exactly. So what had that trauma is passed down from generation to generation.
Being beaten by extension cords is a direct being beaten by whips.
I agree.
And I'll say this: I'm sorry about my chitlin eaters, but those were the foods that they gave the enslaved people, chitlins and things that were the worst.
We
of
just
the worst.
we
made it a delicacy, but it also affects our health to this day and everything. But those are the things that we got from enslavement. And one thing about us, we definitely know how to make lemonade out of lemons, and we can make stuff taste good, but that doesn't mean it's right for us. That is good for us. So it's things, just all kind of things. That's in the family. That's why I think family is so important, and the family structure, because they know that when their family is not intact, then that means that community is not intact. And when the community is not intact, and we're disjointed and we're separated, then we can't get nothing done.
Exactly. And I think you're right. And I was at this presentation, and this guy was talking about how Black men and he was saying, you know, black men, we need to do better by our community. And he was talking about all the way back to slavery, where sometimes if a man ran away, his family was still there on the plantation.
And if he was sold out. So a lot of times they would sell, he was a buck, and they would breed black men, and he would go off and make different babies and things like that. And the master owned, like you said again, the master owned them, the enslaver owned them children, so he had no rights to his own children. But I one thing I don't like to do for me, I understand the male experience and the black woman experience and the black men. We all have our different sets of experience within this society. And we both, I think both of them was horrible. And a lot of times we kind of
try to make it like yours is worse than mine, mine is worse than yours.
And that is not, that's a tactic.
That's a tactic.
And I don't ascribe to who's this and that, because we all have to support one another, and we have to understand each other and begin to understand the trauma of what has going on between the both of us. I love black people.
Yeah, I do too. And I, the reason why I bring that up is because I think that it is something that we have to think about in relation to our homes now. So if black men, you know, this thing of keeping black men out of the household has been happening all the way from the time that we got here in America. And so, and it continued on to, you know, when people were receiving services from the county. You couldn't have a man there in the household that received these services.
It was a strategy that worked.
Exactly.
So the enemy is never brings nothing new. Right?
So it just continues on. And that's where we use on with mass incarceration of the black male. So it just continues on in our community, so you can draw that trajectory.
And that's where we are now. And that's why we need to understand what's going on and look at how we as a community need to embrace each other and work together. Because I think about back then, the Black Wall Streets and everything, they were successful because they were forced to stay together.
They were forced to
what happened.
You
see what happened.
Segregation.
Right.
Segregation made
was
most of us
in some ways
like,
good.
They were, because it made you be wealthy. The doctor had to live next door to the person that wasn't a doctor. You know?
But
the communities were enriched by all of those experiences.
The dollar stayed in the community.
And when you notice the communities, the Koreans have their own community, the Chinese have their own community.
They do right now today.
That's what I'm saying.
Bring it right into America.
We're the only ones.
In Chicago, you literally could go to Chinatown. I have some
in New York, everywhere you can go to Chinatown
from that culture, and they could stay over there and never learn English or anything like that, and still be good.
And they get supported by the government. They have they can get loans before us. All of that. Right. So I say that to say at this time, we definitely went, because you see what is going on with trying to take or ban books and this and programs and we need to teach our own kids history. Our history. It is time for us to get back to the basics and do what we need to do. And we have more resources than we've ever had.
So and that's why I think sometimes we can look at things, because a lot of people are losing their jobs, you know, they're being forced out, like you said, by this DEI thing or whatever. I always believe there's two sides to a coin too. And I study things that are outside our culture in terms of business and economics, right? And we are moving as a country to a space where big box businesses aren't going to really be a thing to that capacity because of AI, and they can make robots, so they're replacing that lower label job.
That's where that's going.
Right, that's where that's going. But I also see the uprising in small businesses that still need those resources. So as like the Jewish community, they believe that you become really great at one thing. And you take that one thing to your culture, and then y'all exchange services, right? So a lot of people that's losing their job, they're really great at something. And while these small entrepreneurs are launching $1, $2, $3 million businesses, they're going to still need that. So then you take your labor, your greatness, and you take it to those small entrepreneurs, and you still able to live without depending on all these quote unquote big box companies.
That's right.
And that's where I see that's where my mind sees all this happening. So while it looks like the world is getting rid of all those things, you still have your skill, you still have people to serve. You just got to kind of rethink the perspective of how you're going to show up in the marketplace.
Exactly, definitely.
Give the name of your organization again and just tell us a little bit about what you all are doing.
Okay, all right. So after finding out about this history, I retired, and it was just like everything fell into place for me to move back home. I wasn't planning to come back to St. Louis. I come all the time to visit family, but I wasn't moving back to the LUE. Okay, I had already started investing in a jet ski business in Turks and Caicos.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Nice.
That I still am, and that was going to be my 6 month out of the year home. And so, and my best friend, we are working on some. Who's in LA, who happened to be the first Black woman to own a cannabis dispensary in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
We have other real estate endeavors that we were working on. So I moved back here. I hit the ground running. I started engaging with St. Louis University on how we can move forward with this information. It's one thing to acknowledge.
I was gonna say, because what was their motives by doing this and coming to you guys?
Okay, and they were, because a lot of, after Mike Brown, but also George Floyd. After that really spurred a global reckoning in race relations and everything. And so from there, everybody was doing this work and trying to reconcile. That's why going backwards is not a thing.
That's like that.
So after that, that's where a lot of the DEI stuff cropped up and everything. And so, and by the way, I just want to say this to me and my family and experts who I work with. This is not a DEI issue. This is about generational harm that was done to a community and by another community, and we happen to be Black. I'm talking about at St. Louis University, but it's a human rights issue, right? Okay, genocide, part of the. So I'll get back to that. But so so when we found out, I came here, and in 2021, myself, my family, and some allies began to organize. And first, our initial what we were going to do was we wanted to preserve this history. We wanted to continue the research to try to connect more family members. Since then, I've met so many new family members who were direct descendants of our ancestors in St. Louis that we never knew.
Oh, wow.
Because through enslavement, we were separated. But that we were still in the St. Louis community. And it's so many of us that don't know that we have family. You walking down, you're like, Dad, we look alike.
Right.
It's probably
like, you look like somebody I know.
Exactly.
Because that's my cousin.
And didn't know it. And so from this, so to answer your question first, they wanted to, part of their project was to do the research, reach out to descendants, and talk about how to reconcile, right? So what that looked like to them and what that looked like to us, maybe two different things.
That exactly.
Far right there.
Okay. Yeah. And so we give props where props were due. I don't look at doing something what you're supposed to do morally as something special. This should have been released. There's a lot of archives out there that should be released, not only in this situation, period. Right? So yes, they did that, which was great. Okay, so now how are we going to move forward? So we began to have workshops and engage with St. Louis University So in 2021, me and a group of my elders met with the president Costello, who is the current president, and he's currently actually resigning in June of this year. I think by the time this air, he may, right. And we engaged with them and we talked about how to move this thing forward. At that time, his words were, well, we're really not ready for any type of reparations or anything. And I want to educate. See, people always see reparations. There's 5 types of reparations. And we are actually getting ready to experience with St. Louis University the first type of reparations, which is called satisfaction. Satisfaction means stuff like a formal apology, a public apology, rehabilitation, compensation, and what you call cessation of non-repeat, meaning making sure that this won't happen again. Restitution is restoring us to what we were. So you talked about before, in our conversation before we started recording about our viral teaching that we had last year, where we went viral because my attorney, well-known attorney Ariva Martin, and Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who is an economist, and she's also former president of Bennett College, and Dr. Kramer from the University of Massachusetts. They did a report on, I gave them some records on the extraction of labor from 1823 to 1825.
Free labor is what made them wealthy.
And that's just
how much that was.
Right,
and how much that would be. That was the first time, although many universities have studied their ties to slavery and they have memorials, but nobody has done that work.
Right.
So we actually did that work and it came out to $360 million to $74 billion. And we released that report and it went viral. It went everywhere and everything like that. Are we talking about that right now? No, we're not. We're not. But we, as a family, we have meetings every month. We talk about what does repair look like for us. And we have presented our 10-point plan to the university. They know of it. And this is the first where we're at, but we're not going to stop here.
Yeah.
So would that include? I mean, like you guys should have scholarships to the
that's all
university.
To the school.
Of course,
Scholarships, free tuition, free housing, all of that.
So all of that is part of our 10-point plan. Free, scholarships. We want a research center to house this information. We want curriculum development to where every student, faculty that walks through that door, they learn about the complete history of
the creation
of that. We have business ventures that we can help to work with St. Louis University on entrepreneurial business. We contracted expert scholars who are working in not only reparative justice, not on an international level, but and a local and regional level. One of my colleagues and friends, Robin Ruth Simmons, who is the first legislator to pass and distribute reparations to descendants who were redlined in Evanston, Illinois.
I saw Evanston was
that
the
went
first
viral
one.
to a lot of people.
Yes. So these are the people that I am educating myself with, who are helping us to. So this is a comprehensive list of requests, and it helps the St. Louis community. We are not only thinking about our own family, but we have been a member of this community since its origin, its inception. All and those who helped to build St. Louis. And it is time, Mayor Tashaura Jones, she had the Reparations Commission.
Yes.
And they came out with their report. I was advisory on that. I don't live in St. Louis City, so I could not become part of the commission, but I was asked to help with advising the commission and providing a report about our situation. So I say that, to stay in line with why I am here in terms of being a woman and your purpose. And each one of us have our own individual purpose in life. And this is how I know this is my calling, because everything that I pray for, I've seen some preferential treatment, miraculous things to happen, and intention. You be intentional about that purpose, and it just seems like everything is manifesting. But you have to, if I could say anything to knowing and understanding who you are, that is the key. We have to know who we are. Because I have had so many people in St. Louis here, our own people say, girl, they ain't gonna do nothing. Oh, girl,
well, they're not gonna do anything if you don't do anything.
Girl, they're not gonna be, and it really threw me but I understand, because if you have seen no progress in terms of them giving, or not, when I say give, I don't mean like no charity, but what is right.
I was just gonna say, we just want to be able to profit off the fruit and wealth that we brought you. No more than you doing the same thing. They do the same thing.
That endowment is $1.7 billion today.
See?
And that was because of the free labor helped the Jesuits to be able to expand their mission and everything. There are two communities that are central to the founding of that university. One community is being recognized, memorialized, and supported financially. I get a lot of people saying, why are we talking about this right now? You were an enslaved, it was your ancestors. And I want to give a quick story because it's important. There are Jesuit faculty at the school, St. Louis University. Now, at the time of enslavement, the Jesuits were the presidents. But in 1967, the institution became a lay institution, and they have a 44-member board of trustees who make the determination and the policy. But they still have to, there are Jesuits on the board. But ultimately, they are strategic priorities for the university. One instance, when we met with the president, when he told us that they were not ready for any reparations, at the same time, they fundraised and they fundraised for the Jesuit faculty, and they built a 20 bedroom, 5 guest bedroom housing on the campus of St. Louis University for the Jesuit faculty.
And that's from their ancestors, right? Because who their ancestors are, right?
It's because of it's because of the historical ties
that they have
to the universities. Now you can say they didn't found the
exactly
back then. So why are they being supported? Which I don't think is anything wrong. They are part of the founders, but there's another community who was doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
So they deserve just as much
support, acknowledgement, a sense of belonging, and to be brought into the university. And I will give a shout out to the Student Government Association and the Black Student Alliance and the students there, because they adopted a resolution standing in solidarity with us. And on Thursday, we had the first ever acknowledgement of our enslaved ancestors, spearheaded by the students along with the DSLUE. On the campus on Thursday, we had a beautiful program and a candlelight vigil to honor our ancestors. That was the first in history.
Yeah. I think that what you said too, I just want to bring this back up where you said that one of your friends said, girl, they ain't gonna do nothing. And it's like, we as Black people have to stop accepting less. We have, if we want more, we got to go for more. We have to know our worth, essentially, because, I was in conversations with people too, and we were talking about reparations. They were like, people just gonna buy some Jordans. Is it? We have to stop talking about ourselves in ignorant ways, okay? Because you think that you're a professional and you got Jordans, I got Jordans.
That's what I'm saying.
If it's your money, you do it, it's yours, right? But also, we just need
Right, and that is so, and you're right, it's ignorant, because first of all, whatever we choose to do with it is okay, but I understand who we are, and I don't think the worst of us.
I don't either.
And I
Exactly.
know
Because I talk about you, I'm talking about me. You say, well, they just going, who is the day? Is that you? You know what I'm
Because I'm
saying?
probably going to buy some Jordans and a building.
right. So we have to stop, and that was my point about that. And luckily, me and my family, I don't, I guess it's me being my mother being a Black Panther, and also just understanding that who we are because that could have really, because who's had said it to me, it could have really broke my spirit in a way, but I didn't allow it. I just felt bad for him, and I said, I remember this day. That's all I said. I want you to remember this day when you said it, because I guarantee you it's not. And here I am now. We just started, but they didn't even think this would happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And I also think that things happen. I think God sends people in the right situation, the right circumstances to make those things happen.
Exactly.
So they're nobody's ever going to give you anything. But once God gives you the opportunity to open and knock down a door, then that's the person that's going to be able to do that and take them there.
I'm sure Harriet Tubman had way more than that.
Right, exactly.
You gonna trust them, and you gonna go through the Underground Railroad. I'm staying on this plantation.
Right, exactly.
But she did what she did. Can you imagine the courage that it took to do that?
I can't even.
But Frederick Douglass, you spoke about him earlier. He said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand."
Yeah, exactly.
They concede nothing, and if you don't ask for it,
and that's why some people have got used to be asking for less.
My husband has a shirt that says, and I think a lot of people have seen this quote from Harriet Tubman, said, "I freed, so many slaves. I would have freed more if they had known that they were slaves."
Amen. Thank you. And so that mentality, those like myself who understand who we are, that we have a right to. I don't have a problem with talking about compensation. They, a lot of people don't feel they are worthy of asking for compensation, but reparations is not new. They have given compensation to many people. I have a whole list of from Callie House on down who have been asking for reparations, which is land and all different types of things. And so I say to you out there that don't feel bad about asking for that debt to be paid. But even moving forward, what I believe in even more is about us. We have to take the gaze off. I don't even focus on what others are doing. I focus on what we're going to do. And we need to stop and come together, and no matter what we get, we're going to go for it. We're going to ask because it's right. But we're not waiting around on them.
Right,
exactly.
My organization is being supported. We got several grants who support the work that we're doing in terms of honoring and preserving our history, because that is super important for our children. We need to educate our children. So yes, that's one thing, but it's about us.
Yes, I love that. So in that, can you tell us, someone sitting there and they're like, hey man, I want to get involved. I want to become an advocate for my people. I want to find my history and do those type things and tell our story. What would be some advice that you would give them to start that journey?
I would say first, you can definitely check out our website. We have an amazing website, www.DSLUE.org, DSLUE.org. We have billboards all around the city that who built SLUE, Black History is American History. Those are ways you can see our billboards. Go into our website. I would say first start with get on a genealogical website. Start doing research on the census, land ownership. Sit your eldest person in your family down and ask them, record this, because we are the keepers of our stories now, because they're trying to erase it. So then now it is up to us to ask granny, great grandmother, if you're blessed to have her, Grandma, what was your life like? Do you know who your granddaddy or grandmother's name is? Write their names down.
Yeah.
Keep that. Then go to the courthouse. They have freedom suits. They have all kind of ways where you can begin to look for your history. You'd be surprised at what you can find, because a lot of times now on the census they have the last person like in 1880 and then you can go and look at the slaves, look at the courthouse and find they'll have names in there and last names, because most of us have the enslaved's last name. And it's so I would start first and foremost, get the oral history of your eldest person on both sides of your family. Ask them so many questions. I remember when my great-great-grandmother was on my mother's side, I was staying with my aunt, my great aunt, my grandfather's sister. And it was this old lady. She was old in the bedroom back in my great aunt's house. And I would go stick my head in there and I was scared and everything. That was my great-great-grandmother. She was born in 1887.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes. I just think about that now. I wish I would have went and sat on her lap and talked to her. I was young, of course, but I think about I actually was in the presence of her, you know? And so if you are blessed to have that, you go talk to them. You ask them, you write that down. You know, we used to write stuff in our Bibles. This person is this person. We have to stop being on TikTok all the time, dancing and singing while they're getting all your information and stuff. And I know I worked at the Pentagon. I have a top secret clearance. Okay, stop telling your business because they tracking you. Okay, but also learn about our history, because we are the griots. We are the family. I'm a Jalamuso. That is meaning I am the storyteller. Okay, we have to become storytellers because. Hey, you never know.
Yeah, that's true. That's how we pass down the history.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Well,
it's amazing.
The work you're doing is amazing. You're setting the trail and being an example for other people.
Thank you so much.
And we just want you to know, Robin Proudie, you are a Black boss lady.
Oh, thank you.
And your legacy will live on the Black Boss Ladies Platform podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the BBL Platform Podcast, the place where legacies live. We hope you will join us on our next inspirational journey to success. Be sure to rate, like, and subscribe to our show. For more information, please visit our website at theBBLplatform.com.